Okay, runtime discussion part two. All right, so I'm gonna go over it again. So
Yuri, all
here,
I'm seeing just gray boxes.
gray boxes. All right, let me
Yeah.
stop sharing and start again. Do you see it now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. So here, what we discussed yesterday. So in here, we didn't do that whole geographical network topology. So once the user selects the geographical network topology, he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
need to enter like the router name because that inventory would already represent that. So by him selecting which network function he wants or PNF, over PNF or VNF or in the future CNF, then he'll be able to select that network function instance we'll have an action set of menu. Okay, he'll have details about what this device is, and then he'll have a list of actions he can do.
Mm-hmm.
Those actions, for each action that he selects, right? Because he might have 20 actions or 100 actions for a given network function, right? Because the network function is going to be tied to a specific package.
Yeah.
So for a given package, when he selects a specific action, he will have the backend return him what are the required input parameters that he needs to send.
Yeah.
Okay,
For each action.
for each action, there's already APIs that we have that do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's an API where you send like the package name, the action, and it'll turn you here. Here's the the required input that is needed.
Yeah.
And it will say if it's a string or it's integer or whatever. So we need to put that in a form for the user to fill out for the required input from a user perspective, because there could be required input from external systems, but that should be resolved by the process itself. So once the user enters the required input for a given action, then he'll be able to submit that to the process of resolving uh, that configured like a provisioning process.
Mm-hmm.
And so he can do it two ways. He can do it just provisioning, so that he can then view the preview of the configlet,
Yeah.
and validate it, and then proceed. Or he can click on, provision and configure, which will basically uh, do the provisioning and configuration step altogether.
Is there any chance that he will need the config light anytime after the deployment?
Yes, yes,
In case if he wanted to review it again or maybe
absolutely,
whatsoever, as in the
Abs-
log.
absolutely. So, not only do we want to store for a given device the diary, the transaction diary, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It means which actions were triggered, what are the configlets that have been generated. We want to store, I want to say maybe the last, let's say, it could be 1 year of logs actually of,
Mm-hmm.
of this device, okay? And the configuration changes that were done for this
Yeah.
device. Um, so all of that should be stored and should be displayed to the users. The user should be able to see on this date, here's the configure that was generated, and here's what changes that happened. You know, um, so they should be able to view all of that. I don't even I want to say I'll go as far as that. That we can even do a delta of what's in the network and how this configuration changed that as well.
Yeah.
Meaning that we can even store, how this impacted the network by doing some sort of delta of the what's in the network itself. So
What's a delta?
the delta means that you take a copy of the running config, okay,
Mhm.
and then you take a copy of the changes that you made that were applied, and then you copy the running config again, and you can see the difference between the running config pre-configuration and post-configuration, and that's the difference going to be.
Okay.
Okay, so once the user is able to uh, view the configuration in the provisioning step, he'll be able to push it. We still like this. Ask yourself, is this config valid? I think that's still a good idea to do, in my opinion. But I would want
That's
to
only
make.
that's only in the case he wanted to provision it.
No, that's like a checkbox. That's basically if the user does a provisioning step and then the configuration step. It's a two-step process. Then
I mean, uh
then he'll be able to kind of validate provisioning step in order to do the configuration step itself.
I mean, you mentioned before that maybe we can have two action like the zero touch, where he skipped this screen and the steps, the provisioning here.
Yes.
So I think the whole process here plus the checking of the validation will be skipped in the other case. Or
Right.
shall we add also the validation? But I don't think we need it as long as we don't have something to validate.
Right. If it's zero touch, you don't need to do it. If it's that other process, I think it's probably we're better off to do it. So one more thing, I want to go back a little bit. The only thing I missed to say is that we also want to ensure that we have rollback access control because like users, there will be certain groups that will be able to execute the packages and the actions within the packages. Okay. We don't want. We may want to limit some. We may expose the network topology to all teams, but we'll try to limit what actions some teams can do from a
Okay.
CBA execution. So I just want to make sure that in our design is that we incorporate rollback access control of what actions can be executed by certain groups within the CBA as well. I think
Where can we set this privilege?
that's a good question. I think we probably will need to do that most likely in design time of setting up this role-based access. Maybe it will be a separate tab as part of the design time activities of how these CBA packages will be allowed to be executed.
The CBA as a whole actions, or maybe a specific actions in the CBA?
Most likely, so this is a question I want to check with the work centers, but I think it will be a CBA. Within the CBA, you'll have specific actions the work centers can do. And some work centers can do other specific actions. So I want to verify that. But
We'll have like a public and private actions.
yes, correct. And we want to do that management as part of design time, most likely. So we'll have a new tab in the design time to kind of manage roles and responsibilities of work centers.
I'm sorry, I see you catch a cold. I'm so sorry
Yeah,
that I have this
no
meeting.
problem.
Um, I'm see. Do you mean that we will have more other privileges we need to set, or just to set it for a public and private only?
So what we'll most likely have is the like a set of different groups, work center groups, and what actions those groups can execute, what CVA actions those groups can execute. That definition will be done as part of design time itself within the CBA designer. And
And the default will be a public for all the work center.
the default you said will be what?
The default status will be that this action will be accessible to all the work centers. What
No,
the default status?
no. Default will be that nobody can execute these actions.
Okay.
But what I would like you, can you check with Abdul from his perspective, what the rules should be from Orange? I'll check from AT&T side. And ask him if it's some work centers can execute some actions within the CBA, or is it going to be more, a workflow can access a CBA or not access a CBA? That's the other approach we can take. Um, so that's one important thing. Right now we have a gap in the designer, and most likely we'll have to add it, but we need more details about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So other than that, once the user selects the action and selects zero touch or selects the two-step kind of workflow, we want to be able to execute it. We want to be able to then when we execute it, right, it needs to be like an interactive sessions because there could be multiple steps that we do, and for each step that we execute, we want to be able to view the details of those steps in the UI itself.
Like what steps?
Say it again.
What steps you mentioned? You mentioned that we may have multiple steps.
Yes.
What steps?
Oh, in a workflow, you know how we create an action? There are multiple components that we hit.
Okay.
So we do resource resolution, then we'll do maybe netcom, maybe we'll do a script, and maybe do another resource resolution. So what I would like to make sure we do is we create like you know how we have a hierarchy of each transaction we execute, starting from parent and all the way down?
Yeah.
So we want to be able to kind of represent that hierarchy itself. It's an interactive session, so you can see that you executed, let's say, step 1 here. You can see the input, the output, then step 2, step 3, step 4, and then you can expand this to see the input and the output, or you can collapse everything into the overall status. So what I'm trying to say, we want to be able to see intermittent status, and we want to be able to see the final status as well.
Yeah. Can I share my screen? I already done this thing before in
Okay.
another application, yeah, for Orange itself. I'm kind of seeing some relationship between the runtime and this application actually. This just was a prototype for this like an execution and the status of each step. You can see my screen?
Yes, I can see it. Now, the only thing I would like to see is also the input and the output of that.
For each function?
Yes.
Okay. Just more details, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, sure. Yeah, Yuri, please continue.
Okay. So so once we deploy it, you see this deployment status, the logs uh, itself, and
You
then
mentioned
I
the
think
logs, but so far I didn't know what is logs.
logs is what you just showed, right? It's basically the status of each of the intermediate steps that we execute and the final step.
Okay. Uh,
Deploying
mhm.
deployment status is basically the output that we get, the final output
Of the whole process.
of the whole process,
Okay.
right? It's successful or it's failed or it's partial, whatever it is. And that's
Okay.
it. I mean, so oh, just here you can see that we have configlet resolution, resource resolution, right? Um, so you
The
can see
status here is the deployment status.
no. This is for the parameters we are resolving, right? This is the status of those parameters.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you have, let's say, 100 resources, some could be successful, some could be failed. We should be able to retrigger them because here we didn't do that. But here you see we allowed the user to edit and change whatever it was. But I want to take it as far as that we should be able to even retrigger those APIs to resolve that specific resource.
Okay. And this table and this status, we only see it after the deployment.
No, if you do zero touch, yes. If you do the two-step
After,
workflow, then
yeah.
you'll see it at the first step.
Okay. But I mean, in this case, the two steps case, we see the resource resolution table. This one after I think we after the deployment or before the deployment.
Before the deployment.
Okay.
Because the
So
configuration we generate requires the resources as well, right?
on the previous step.
Exactly.
Okay. So this is just a status that we already have in the previous one.
Right. Correct.
And I can see that we can redeploy again after the deploy we made. We can run again at the deployment. I see the deployment config is
Right. So
still
first,
active.
this was a two-step workflow. So the first step was always to resolve the parameters and the configlet, and then the second step is to deploy.
Yeah, I see in this example that we already made the deployment, but I see the deploy configlet button is active again. Does that mean that we can redeploy again?
No, we cannot.
Okay.
Here we clicked on deploy, and we see the status. It should be disabled after that. Okay, if they want to redeploy, they should select that action again and then redeploy it because we want to track each request as a separate request itself, as a separate transaction. The only other thing I want to mention is that in your action, right, you can have multiple templates. So this preview was done for one template here. If you click on next template, you see another template. So what I want to say is that we need a way to represent multiple configurates uh, when we execute some of our actions, okay? Sarah, you're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was moving. Please, Yuri, can you repeat the last part again?
So what I was trying to say is that you see how we have one template here? In Action, it can have multiple templates, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we need a way to represent multiple previews for a given action. In our case, with the template, you see how we have next template? We clicked on next template to show multiple templates.
Mm.
And for each template, we also had to show the result data
Yeah.
as well. So I want to be able to view multiple templates, view the resource resolution of those multiple templates, and then trigger a configlet.
So, this screen is just showing one configurator for one template,
It's one configlet, yes.
and the checkbox here is only for one template, or for the whole
No,
or
it's for
all
the
other
whole
templates.
thing. It's for the whole thing.
Okay.
So we need a better way to do it. This was a poor design. I think we need a better design of how we represent configlets and how we do the zero touch step or we do the two-step workflow.
And the export will which file type will we can export the config with?
It's a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Okay, any questions?
No, I'm good now.
All right. I'll send out this recording and the other recording. I'll post them today. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah.
I hope we get better soon.
Bye bye. Appreciate it. Thank you.